The Unspoken Elephant in the Room of Netanyahu's Intent in Gaza by Alastair Crooke, November 13th, 2023. Is this punishment on Gaza's civilian population prompted by desire for vengeance, or is it an outpouring of eschatological rage and determination? The point about the Gaza crisis is that should everyone agree to stick their head in the sand and ignore the elephant in the room, it's easy enough so to do. The meaning to a severe crisis is only properly understood when someone notices the elephant and says, "Look out, there's an elephant stamping here." That's where we are today. Slowly, the West is beginning to take notice. The rest of the world, however, is transfixed by it and is being transformed by it. What is the elephant or elephants in the room? Blinken's recent regional diplomacy was a bust. None of the regional leaders that Blinken met would talk further about Gaza beyond demanding stridently no Palestinian population displacement into Egypt, a stop to this madness, the carpet bombing of Gazans, and the demand for an immediate ceasefire. And Biden's calls for a pause, softly at first, and the more strident now, is being bluntly ignored by the Israeli government. The specter of President Carter's impotence during the Iran hostage crisis hangs ever more soberly in the backdrop. The truth is that the White House cannot force Israel to do its will. The Israeli lobby holds more clout in Congress than any White House team. Thus, no exit from the Israeli crisis is readily to be seen. Biden made his bed with the Netanyahu cabinet and must live with consequences. Impotence, then, as the Democratic Party fractures beyond the simplistic division between centrists versus progressives. The polarization emanating from the no ceasefire stance is having stark destabilizing effects on politics, both in the United States and Europe. Impotence, then, as the shape of the Middle East crystallizes into sharp antagonism towards the West's perceived accommodation of the mass slaughter of Palestinian women, children, and civilians. The die may be too far cast to break the ongoing tectonic reset already underway. Western double standards are just too inescapably obvious now to the global majority. The large elephant is this. Israel has dropped more than 25,000 tons of high explosives since the 7th of October. The 1945 Hiroshima nuke was 15,000 tons equivalent. What exactly is Netanyahu and his war cabinet's aim here? Ostensibly, the earlier military operation in Jabalia camp was about targeting a Hamas leader suspected of lurking under the camp. But 6 2,000-pound bombs for one Hamas target in a crowded refugee camp? And why, too, the attacks on water cisterns, hospital solar energy panels and hospital entrances, roads, schools, and bakeries? Bread has almost disappeared in Gaza. The UN says all bakeries in northern Gaza have closed following the bombing of the last bakeries. Clean water is desperately short, and thousands of bodies are slowly decomposing under rubble. Disease and epidemic are appearing, whilst humanitarian supplies are being tightly restricted as a bargaining tool toward further hostage releases. The editor of Haaretz, Aleph Bin, puts the Israeli strategy very plainly. Quote, "The expulsion of the Palestinian residents, transformation of their homes into piles of construction rubble, and the restriction of the entry of supplies and fuel into Gaza are the tie-breaking move employed by Israel in the current conflict, unlike all previous rounds of fighting in the Strip." End of quote. Of what are we talking here? This clearly is not about avoiding collateral civilian deaths occurring as the IDF battles with Hamas. There have been no street battles in Jabalia or in and around the hospitals, as one soldier commented, quote, "All we've done is ride around in our armored vehicles. The boots on the ground stuff will come later." End of quote. The pretext of a humanitarian evacuation, therefore, is bogus. Hamas's main forces are sitting deep underground for the right moment to engage the IDF, i.e., when they are on foot amidst the rubble. For now, the IDF are staying in their tanks, but sooner or later they will have to engage with Hamas on foot, so the fight with Hamas has barely begun. Israeli soldiers complain that they barely see Hamas fighters. Well, that is because they are not present at street level, except in one or two man raiding parties that exit the underground tunnels to attach an explosive device to a tank or to fire a rocket at it. The Hamas operatives then quickly return to the tunnel from which they emerged. Some tunnels are constructed only for this purpose, as once-and-done structures. As soon as the raiding soldier returns, the tunnel is collapsed so that Israeli forces cannot enter or follow. New throwaway tunnels are continually being constructed. You will not find any Hamas fighters in the Gaza civil hospitals either. Their own hospital is in the main facilities deep underground, along with dormitories, stores to last several months, armories, and excavating equipment to dig new tunnels. And the Hamas cadre is not to be found in the basements of the main Gaza hospitals. Haaretz defense correspondent Amos Harel writes that Israel is only now coming to understand the scope and sophistication of the underground Hamas facilities. He acknowledges that the military brass, unlike the cabinet circles, is not talking about eradicating the seed of Amalek, a biblical reference to the extermination of the Amalek people, i.e., genocide, but even the IDF military leaders are not sure about their end purpose, he notes. So, the elephant in the room for the inhabitants of the Middle East, watching the destruction of the above-ground civil structure, is what exactly is the objective of this killing. Hamas are deep below the ground, and although the IDF claims many successes, where are the bodies? We don't see them. The bombing, therefore, must be to force an evacuation of civilians, a second Nakba. And the intent lying behind the expulsion? Ben says it is to create a sense that they will never return home. Quote, "Even if some ceasefire is soon declared under American pressure, Israel will be in no hurry to withdraw and allow the population to return to the northern strip. And if they do come back, what will they come back to? After all, they will have no homes, streets, educational institutions, shops, or any of the infrastructure of a modern city." End of quote. Is this punishment on Gaza's civilian population prompted by a desire for vengeance? Or is it an outpouring of eschatological rage and determination? No one can say. This is the elephant, and on its clarification hangs the issue of whether the United States, too, will be tainted by a crime. On this clarification hangs whether some sustained diplomatic accommodation can be found, or not, if Israel is indeed returning to biblical eschatological root justification. It is this issue which will come to haunt Biden personally and the West collectively in the future. Whatever timeline Biden may have had in mind, time is rapidly slipping away from him amid rising international outrage, as the focus on the Israel-Gaza conflict is now primarily centered around Gaza's humanitarian crisis, and no longer the 7th of October attack. It may seem implausible, yet Gaza, with an area of only 360 square kilometers, is determining our global geopolitics. This sliver of land, Gaza, also to an extent, controls what comes next. "We will not stop," Netanyahu has said. "There will be no ceasefire." Whilst in the White House, an administration insider admits, quote, "They're watching a train wreck and they can't do anything about it. The train wreck is in Gaza, but the explosion is in the region. They know they can't actually stop the Israelis from what they're doing. End quote. Time is running out, and this precisely is the averse side to the elephant paradox. But how much time is there before time runs out? That is a moot question. The averse side to the conundrum appears to have caused confusion in the West, and in Israel too. Did Saeed Nasrallah's speech last Sunday lower the risk of war widening beyond Israel, and thus implying that time might be more flexible and give more space for White House deconflicting? Or did it send a different message? Just to be clear, it did answer the question of whether World War III was about to break out. Nasrallah was clear that full regional war is not sought by any member of the United Resistance Front. Yet, all options remain on the table, contingent upon United States and Israel future moves, Nasrallah underlined. The following context to Nasrallah's address is vital to its full understanding. On this occasion, uniquely, his speech reflected wide consultation amongst all Axis fronts. There were, in short, multiple consultations and inputs to its final shape. The address, therefore, did not reflect the singularity of Hezbollah's position alone. This is why it is possible to say there is a consensus against rushing headlong into an all-out regional war. The address, as a composite work, was highly nuanced, which might account for some misconceptualizations. As usual, the mainstream media just wanted the key takeaway, so Hezbollah did not declare war became the easy-to-hand takeaway. The first essential point from Saeed Nasrallah's address, nonetheless, was that he effectively made Hezbollah the guarantor of Hamas's survival, specifically identifying Hamas by name rather than referring to the resistance as a generic entity. Hezbollah therefore restricts itself, for the interim, to undefined and limited operations on the Lebanese border environs, so long as Hamas's survival is not at risk. The party nonetheless promises to directly intervene in some way should Hamas's survival be imperiled. This is a red line that will worry the White House. Clearly, Netanyahu's objective of the extirpation of Hamas runs directly counter to Hezbollah's red line and risks the direct engagement of Hezbollah. However, the strategic shift in this key policy statement on behalf of the full axis is the shift to perceiving U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East as keystone to the region's ills. Instead of perceiving Israel as author of the present crisis, the latter was downgraded by Nasrallah from independent actor to that of being but one U.S. military protectorate among others. In plain terms, Syed Nasrallah directly challenged not just the occupation of Palestine, but the United States in the round, as ultimately at the root of what has befallen the region, from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq to Palestine. In some respects, in this respect, Nasrallah echoed President Putin's 2007 Munich warning to a West which was in the process of massing NATO forces on Russia's borders. Putin's riposte at the time was challenge accepted. So too, as the United States masses significant naval marine forces around the region to deter Hezbollah and Iran, but the latter declined to be deterred. Nasrallah said of the United States warships, "We have prepared for them something." And later in the week, the party unveiled its shore-to-ship missile capabilities. The bottom line is that a united front of states and armed actors are warning of a wider challenge to United States hegemony. They effectively are saying, challenge accepted, too. Their demand is clear. Stop the killing of civilians. Stop the attacks and bring about a ceasefire. No expulsions. No new Nakba. In specific terms, the United States was warned to expect pain if the attack on Gaza is not quickly stopped. How much time is left to bring the cessation about, if it is even possible? There are no timeline specifics. What is meant by pain? That is not clear, but look around. The Houthis are sending waves of cruise missiles aimed at Israel. Some don't make it and are shot down. How many is unknown. United States bases in Iraq are regularly, currently, daily, under attack. Many American soldiers have been injured, and Hezbollah and Israel are, for now, in limited war across the Lebanese border. Not all out war, but if Israel's attacks on Gaza continue over the coming weeks, we should expect a managed escalatory tightening of the screw across different fronts, which, of course, risks slipping out of control. This article was by Alastair Crooke of the Strategic Culture Foundation. You can read more of his works on antiwar.com.